Familia, it is finally that time. We have ourselves a new trailer for the latest Fast and Furious movie titled Fast X. If you're like me, you've been trucking along with this franchise from the very beginning. You have been there for the most ridiculous, the most mind-boggling, some of the best action movies we've actually seen. And now we are finally starting at the end of the road with Fast X, set to be the second to last movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. We all call him BS on that, but for now, that's what they're telling us. And with this trailer coming close to almost 4 minutes long, we have so much to talk about here, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing for you guys, giving you my reaction to this Fast and Furious trailer, pointing out some details you might have missed, speculating to where it could all be ending, and even a major hint by Vin Diesel on one of the villains for the final movie, where he is hoping Robert Downey Jr. will play that role. So be sure to leave me your opinions down below of what you thought of this latest Fast and Furious trailer. Are you on board? Are you still iffy? Did the franchise lose you a long time ago? And for fun, I want to know, what was the most ridiculous stunt you think they ever pulled off? Some people might say it was going off to space, but I still think it was them driving off a cliff with no luck whatsoever and just happening to latch onto part of a bridge, taking them to the next. What was that? All right, but jumping right into it here, you guys know my feelings on the franchise. I am always a defender of the Fast and Furious franchise. I think they're just guilty, dumb, fun movies. After Fast 5, the franchise really took off in quality for me, and it was staying consistently good up until Fast and Furious 8. Then with the latest entry, Fast 9, that just left me disappointed. It felt like the most soulless sequel they could have ever come up with, and I was honestly a little bored throughout the movie. So I was hoping this trailer could just really reel me in back into the Fast and Furious world, and it didn't really do that for me. I'm not going to say it's a bad trailer. I actually prefer the direction they're going in right here because it looks like they're kind of toning down the ridiculous factor. We all know the Fast and Furious franchise has been built on ridiculous stunts, but all the stunts performed in Fast 9 and how a lot of the characters were just becoming bulletproof invincible, it started reaching levels of becoming a self-parody. Here with some of the music choices and stunts they were performing, it didn't feel so wild and out there for the Fast and Furious franchise, so I'm kind of looking forward to them trying to take themselves a little bit more seriously. Still, the thing I think a lot of us are going to be talking about is, oh my goodness, they are tying it back to Fast and Furious 5, the best Fast and Furious sequel of all time. You can argue whichever way you want, but Fast 5 was the movie to me that made me go, oh my god, these movies are actually good. But that's where they're tying the villain in, Jason Momoa, who's playing Dante, that is also the son of the main villain from Fast and Furious 5, where Dom and Brian not only stole all the money from his family, but also happened to kill a lot of his family members. If anything, this has been an ongoing cliche thing of a villain having a family member that then wants revenge. I mean, that's kind of how Jason Statham was introduced into the Fast and Furious franchise. It's just kind of funny that Jason Momoa as Dante took 12 years to perfectly articulate his plan and then fall through with it in Fast and Furious X. I'm gonna make a bold prediction right here that they are gonna retcon Han's death for like the millionth time in the franchise and finally pin everything and everyone who has died before on Dante. I think they're gonna make him like the guy who was working in the shadows, always messing with Dom's family until he just finally wanted to jump out, or at least they gotta do something like that, because the parts of the trailer that intrigued me the most is seeing Han and Jason Statham's character working together when at one point in the franchise they were basically mortal enemies. For the longest time, the series made us believe that Jason Statham was responsible for the death of Han. Now let's talk about some of these newer faces that are going to be introduced into the movie. For one, everybody looking at Brie Larson. For the longest time, people were speculating that she was going to end up being the sister of Brian O'Connor. That's Paul Walker's character, which, side note, really curious to how they're going to explain Paul Walker not being in this one. I'm going to guess that with Dominic Toretto's kid being kidnapped, Brian and his family think that their kids are next, so Brian takes his kids and goes off with them in a safe place while his wife continues to join the family and fight alongside them. But in the YouTube description of the trailer, they do kind of let us know some details about Brie Larson. For one, her name is Tess, and she's described as a rogue representative from the agency. That's the agency that Mr. Nobody's character worked for, just this organization that does some protecting on the world and sometimes hire a bunch of street racers to save that world. Alan Richardson's character as Ames is supposed to be the new head of the agency, who doesn't hold the same fondness for Dom's crew as his predecessor, Mr. Nobody. So it looks like he'll play a secondary villain to Dom's crew, wanting to arrest them and just be done with this street racing crew. And then they also give us details on Daniela Melchior as a Brazilian street racer with a powerful tie to Dom's past. Another baby mama Dom? Is that what we doing? Them Brazilian girls, your weakness, Dom? But I feel like the part that is most intriguing and is really going to tie in to the events of Fast and Furious 11 or Fast and Furious 10 Part 2, which is supposed to be their finale of the franchise, is this scene right here with Cypher's character and Letty strapped down with all these scientists around them. Now, before Vin Diesel's recent comments about who he wants the villain to be for the next movie, I would have had no idea what was going on here. I'm like, all right, are they gonna do a brain swap right here? Is Letty gonna end up in Cypher's body and Cypher's gonna end up in Letty's body, and it's gonna be some sort of Freaky Friday situation? I would not put it past the Fast and Furious franchise.
Who do you want to see in the next movie? You've had Charlize, Brie Larson, Helen Mirren. You have Rita Moreno. Who do you want? Who do you want? Make the pitch. Let's make it happen.
Robert Downey Jr.
Who does he play?
There's a character that, without telling you too much about what happens in the future, there's a character who is the antithesis of Dom, who is promoting AI and driverless cars and a philosophy that with that goes your freedom. And there is somebody that believes that's the future, and that's at direct odds with the Toretto mentality.
And his dream casting for that role would be Robert Downey Jr., essentially playing an evil Elon Musk. That's what it sounds here. Someone who is promoting AI driving. They're finally going to be touching upon some of these electric vehicles that can drive themselves. The next movie, that actually sounds kind of wild. Can you imagine Toretto and his gang racing and driving away from people who are not even in the cars? I know they kind of did something like that in one of the previous movies where they had AI cars just kind of fall off a building, but this time they would actually be driving themselves, racing along the streets, avoiding traffic. That could be kind of interesting, and I can understand why he would want Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he played Iron Man, Tony Stark, a brilliant genius, and that's kind of what he wants this villain to be. So going back to that little sequence there, just throwing out my wild speculation, Cypher has partnered up with this mystery villain that they have yet to cast for the next movie, and he is making copies of their brain or taking analysis of what makes them good drivers, and then using that information to plug it into his AI, and then we could essentially have a car that drives like Letty, a car that drives like Dom. I don't know, man. Fast and Furious world, I am giving you free little cool advice to get me back into this world. In the end, like I said, this trailer might have not really have hyped me up either way, but it wasn't a bad trailer where I was like, oh, this is gonna be garbage. I did not watch 9 of these freaking movies to not be there for day 1 of Fast X, so I'm gonna be there day 1. And this is where I throw it off to you guys. What did you think of the Fast and Furious trailer? What do you think about some of these details for the next villain? What do you think is exactly going on in this little science lab room? As well as your thoughts and theories and speculation for what else they could drop as bombshells in this movie. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.